Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you this morning. I hope everyone is doing well. Excited to be back with you today for the coffee break. We want to talk about 3 or 4 things before we get started with the questions. I will start by sending it over to Kate, who will talk about exciting news on our enrollment. So, Kate.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I just want to talk a little bit more on the enrollment. I gave a bit of an update to Faculty Senate, but just wanted to give a little bit more details here. So as you all know, our fall enrollment ended up being at 9,799 total students. So again, just to emphasize the 3 key components to that growth were from our Rising Phoenix and our college credit and high school students. So just to give a little bit of context there, 26% of our students are high school students right now. So that really does show that growth within that program and that contribution in terms of our total head count. Our graduate enrollment also grew, so that's kind of the third driver. So that is up 15% over last year. So overall, thinking about our head count, then we are up that 9%. But then in how that translates into our student credit hours and our FTE, because again, those are students paying different tuition with the college credit in high school, that translates to 3% increase in student credit hours and a 3% increase in our FTE. So just want to share a couple other quick statistics with you before I turn things back over to the other presenters. But in terms of first generation students, so that is a population that we are trying to target in terms of our first gen forward. So we did see 11% growth in our first generation students over last year. So that is exciting. We did see also growth within our students of color over last year. So we saw 5% growth overall, specifically 16% growth when we're looking at our Hispanic Latinx students. Which again, as we are working to become known as a Hispanic serving institution, exciting to see that progress. And then the last piece I wanted to share in terms of our local students. So we are also trying to better represent our local students. So this year we saw 10% growth in our students from Brown County specifically, and 6% growth when we look at our local 16 county footprint. So lots of excitement there. Happy to share those details now that they're officially available, and happy to turn it over to our next presenter.
Thanks, Kate. Lots of really good things to hear there, and I think it's important to keep all that in context, like Kate is doing. It's I think one of the things I just want us to lean into is to not apologize at all that we are serving students from high school all the way through retirement. That's a good thing, and it's gonna cause us to both increase over the long term the traditional students that everybody thinks about, 18-year-olds out of high school. Doing all these types of programs is going to help us grow at a gradual rate in that area also, which is really important. So that these are all really good signs for us. All the work that's been happening on the campus is starting to pay off in important ways. So thanks to everyone who's involved in that. Kate's leadership, Jen Jones, and everywhere across the university, Corey and all everybody in student affairs, that's caused us to be able to get this kind of growth. So. I'll start with a few things this morning to talk through. First of all, I'll start with maybe an easier one to talk about, but I know I wish we'd be able to say a different thing. You know, I know for years we've had a holiday lunch, and given what's still going on with the pandemic, I don't think that would be a wise thing for us to do this year, to bring all the faculty and staff together in one room to eat. So instead, we've worked, I want to thank Mary Kate Antonetta for this, has worked to make sure that we have these really cool pies and pie flights that'll be available to all faculty and staff. So be on the lookout for emails regarding that. We'll have a time, I believe on December 6th, probably in the afternoon, where we'll open up the Phoenix rooms where people could come in. We'll be there to greet everybody and thank them and wish everybody well for the holiday season. And you could pick up a pie and a pie flight, cookies, all kinds of stuff that you'd be able to take back with you, as well as I believe hot chocolate. I know it's not the normal lunch that we would do, but we want to make sure that we're still wishing everybody well and doing the best we can under the circumstances that we can in the pandemic. Secondly, I want to talk through and I've started to talk, mentioned it in Faculty Senate and a couple other places already about what we're doing in compensation. This is a bit of a complicated topic, so I'll do my best to explain this efficiently, but there's a lot to explain here. So I want to start just with a little background in that, you know, as all of you know, especially if you've been here for any amount of time, typically at most organizations you would get an annual cost of living increase. In the state of Wisconsin, obviously over the last decade plus, those have not been regular. Those have not happened on a regular basis. That has caused some major compression issues in our salaries across the UW system, but certainly here at UW Green Bay, as we were also experiencing budget cuts and other things that compounded our ability to raise salaries. And so this has really come to a head, and as you know, across the country now, we're seeing you know, labor shortages all over the place, and we're not immune to that. Just like in the pandemic, it's what's happening outside of the university affects the inside of the university. And we've seen over the last several months, actually, you know, a lot of people who are leaving their jobs, mostly due to compensation. There are other factors as well, but primarily that we're not competitive with the outside market in some cases. So we have been working to try to fix that as fast as we can, because there are certain areas that, particularly when we have resignations, it causes a threat to the university. That has already happened in facilities and with our police force, and we worked over the last 6 months or so to make sure that we can retain great people in facilities and great people in our police. And more recently, it has occurred with our financial specialists in business and finance. Many of you I know have been struggling with purchasing. That's because we've lost a lot of people in purchasing. So we have also adjusted the salaries there to keep up. As a cabinet, we started looking at this, and I believe this is something that we have to address holistically as fast as we can. And as you all know, it's problematic to be able to do so. We don't have enough recurring funds to be able to raise salaries the way you would normally do it when you have recurring funds to be able to do that. What we are doing is, because we grew again, we're going to take some risks. And we're going to take $500,000 of money that is not recurring. It's money that we're betting on. That will sustain our growth, and then we'll continue to grow slightly in the coming years. We hope we'll do more than that. So to allow us to start proactively getting ahead and fixing some more compensation across the university. Now, I want to talk about this carefully because I want to make sure everybody understands that it would cost millions and millions of dollars for us to be able to fix all the compensation issues across the campus. It's not fixable in one step, but I feel we have to start somewhere. So in order to do this, we've worked with HR, and Melissa Nash and everyone in HR has done an amazing job to put a study together that showed where there are competitive market factors that are working against us, where we're having issues in retention, where we're having issues in being able to recruit appropriate people in staff and faculty jobs. So there's some things we're going to address here moving forward, and I'll list them for you now. And I know this is difficult to say because I know this means that some of you are not going to get this initial bump, right? We can't, again, fix everyone all at once. There's a few things we're going to do that will be a little more far-reaching. One is the compression issues we have at the campus are the worst amongst our faculty. We have real problems with no gaps between, or not big enough gaps between assistant and associate and full professors. To do this, we have to push up, I believe, from the bottom. And so the one thing that we're going to do is we're going to raise everyone's faculty salary that is below $53,000. That's an assistant professor up to $53,000. So the lowest any faculty member can now make is $53,000 on a tenure track line. We're also going to take associate professors and raise any associate professor who's not at $58,000 and raise them up to $58,000. And this is important. We have to start creating space so that we can get people farther along the line as they get promoted. I know this doesn't. There's a lot of parts on the faculty that overall that we still want to we still want to fix. Some of these include, our lectures, what is happening with our part-time faculty, the rate that we pay. I know we still have issues at the full professor level. We just can't fix everything at once. On the staff side, or I should say also on the faculty side, we're also going to address 6 specific units that Kate and the deans will work on fixing because we're having real competitive problems in these units. They're just, it's becoming harder and harder to recruit and retain faculty in these areas. And those areas are computer science, graphic design, marketing, accounting, nursing, and education. So over the next 3 or 4 weeks or so, the deans will work with Kate to be able to make recommendations on how to address compensation in those units, and we will work to approve that. And then emails will be sent out to all affected faculty by January 7th, and January 16th. Hopefully, that new pay will take effect. We'll do the same process for staff. And the areas of staff that we'll address next to help bring up salaries are in administrative support, particularly in non-exempt positions that have administrative support for units, in IT, in HR, in bilingual hires. So we've worked very hard to increase the bilingual capability of our staff, and it's becoming more difficult to hire those. We need to make sure we raise the pay of those. In advancement and in student accessibility services. So the same process will go forward there, and we will be able to hopefully address those units as fast as possible. I also want to mention, and I've been working with the UC on this, and I'm going to try over the break to get a proposal together with the cabinet to be able to send to the UC about a streamlined way that we will look at the Position Review Committee, or the PRC. So I think we have had the PRC for a long time. That worked very well at a time when we had to cut at the university, and we're looking now for a different way for us to be able to consider how to keep growing the university. So be on the lookout for that in the coming weeks and months. We'll work together with governance on this to make sure that we have a process that is transparent, that everybody understands how and when new positions are approved, and how and why, and what that process is, and that I think will help us also to be able to move forward and provide to somewhat, although we still need some control at the central level, but to decentralize a bit how that is working. And so those are the issues on compensation that we are dealing with. I also want to mention that it feels like a while ago now, but I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, Kate, Corey, and Tony and I visited each of our locations. And I think one thing that I would add to Kate's comments is that because of the Rising Phoenix, we have the only 3 locations in the state of Wisconsin that are growing. And that is pretty exciting also to see. There's really great work happening on those locations. I'm asking as a campus, as a university, that we continue to lean in to the idea that we are one university, right? And we have 4 locations that you can access UW Green Bay in Sheboygan, Manitowoc, Green Bay, or Marinette. And due to that, we had long talks about this at each of the locations, about what that meant for each location, and how at the locations we can continue to really to benefit from that and push into that. But I also need to ask on the Green Bay campus a couple things. One, I'd like to ask just overall across the whole university that we stop calling the Green Bay campus the main campus. It's just the Green Bay campus. We are all one university. There is no main campus, so a student can access at any point. And to please, if we can, let's try to. It helps in our mindset to stop calling the Green Bay campus the main campus. It's just one of the hubs that we have that allow people to get an education. I also want to just encourage everybody, if possible, to continue to think about how we can engage across all of our locations. And primarily, some of you do this so amazingly well, and how you're communicating and building bridges across all of our locations. But to continue to think about how we can create community, and how we can make sure that we're not just saying that we're one university with 4 locations, but that we're truly acting like it. And so I just want to continue to ask everyone to think about that, and to continue to work at that. It's a big part of the strategy of what we're doing as a university. As Kate mentioned, where we're growing is in our 16 county footprint. That's really, really important. And to do that, we need Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and Marinette to thrive. It's crucial to how the whole university is going to move going forward, and for us to reach our potential, I think, of what we can do to serve Northeast Wisconsin. So with that, I think we will get started with questions this morning. Fortunately, I should say, Sue Bodilli is on vacation. It's very well earned, and we will today have questions asked by Ben Junio. So Ben, no pressure here, but everyone is used to Sue doing an amazing job with this. So we'll turn it over to you, and let's get started with the questions.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So our first question is there any update on the vaccination mandates for UW Green Bay?
Okay, thanks. That's a great question. So at this point, I just want to make sure that I answer this as carefully as I can. There's no decision yet that we're going to make on the vaccine mandates. We're going to wait to make sure we have full clarification from the federal government, from UW system, from the regents, to make sure that we know all the options that are in place, and to make sure that we're making a decision that is, as President Thompson, I think, very aptly said, does not put any federal dollars at risk. Of which we have very few on the UW Green Bay campus. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that. We do have some that come in the form of grants, but we don't have any big federal contracts or anything like that. And also is the most humane way for us to move forward as a campus. And so we've tried to do that throughout the pandemic, and we'll continue to do it. We'll make sure we comply, and we'll do it in the most humane way possible. But we won't make a decision until we have to make a decision, and that time is not yet.
Great. The next question is, the Chancellor's directive on face coverings is set to expire next Friday. Will that be extended?
Thanks, Ben. Yep, it is extended. It has been extended to December 31st, and we will continue to watch very carefully and decide what to do from there. So it's, again, just to remind everybody that throughout the pandemic, we'll continue to wait as long as we can to make these decisions and assess what's going on in local conditions as we make them. As you know, right now, things are not going very well, and so we've extended it out to December 31st.
Great. What kind of marketing will there be for the new campus barbershop? And why wasn't there promotion ahead of the opening of the barbershop?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That's a great question. So number one, we are excited to have a barbershop now on campus in our University Union. It has been a work in progress. This week is a soft opening, which means that we are testing the waters. We've yet to really get a scheduling appointment and the costs and the services in place. So we will have a more robust opening after the fall break and into the spring. But we now have a Stars Barbershop on our campus here primarily from Tuesday through Saturday, and we are excited about that. And it is open for students primarily, but faculty and staff can also use it as well at a cost.
Wonderful. Parking prices have significantly shot up for 2022. They went up a little in 2021, and we were told due to construction costs. Cracks were filled, covering the parking lines, and then basic work like painting those lines have been neglected despite these jumping costs. This person has 2 questions. Can we see what work is going to be done to improve the lots with the money we are paying? And is the cost to park expected to decrease once these major repairs have been completed?
Good morning. So we did hold off on any parking rate increases last year during COVID. So the bump that was to take effect did take effect this year. We have about $2.5 million worth of parking and road improvements that will be occurring this next summer. So you should see a lot of the results of the increase in the price to park and whatnot. We have a lot more projects in the queue down the road. We have not had the funding to properly maintain our roads and our parking lots, unfortunately, and you can see that when you drive around. The state used to pay for roads, and unfortunately they do not do that anymore. So we now have to fund all of our road improvements and repairs and maintenance. So again, we have a lot that's going to be done this next summer, so you should see the results of some of that, but more to come. And it's an unfortunate thing, but our parking rates are actually pretty low compared to a lot of the other institutions in the state and the cities, and you have to pay to park in the city. So I think we're happy we can keep those down to the extent we can, but lots of maintenance that needs to be done.
Okay. There's been talk regarding not being able to hire to fill vacant positions and issues retaining employees. There's also talk about implementing mandatory COVID shots. How will this implementation impact our ability to retain our long-term employees who cannot get the experimental shots due to religious, medical, or personal convictions? And what will be done to prevent us from losing more valuable employees? Following UW Systems policies is not a justifiable reason to outcast valuable employees.
Okay, thanks for that question. I think I think this may have been written before I made I answered the first question, but we're definitely not ready to make a decision on that. And as I mentioned before, we will make sure that. I don't want to conjecture, but my sense is, given the amount of federal funding we have on the campus, that the vaccine requirement will affect very few people on our campus. But I want to make sure that I don't want to get in front of it, because I don't yet know exactly how it will be applied. And so we have to wait for further guidance from the federal government. We got to wait for further guidance from the places in the state that we report to. And so we'll wait for that and then be able to make a clear decision.
Okay. Given the uptick in cases in the state and our communities, can you talk about the mask mandate extension? Too many students are not following the above the nose and mouth part of this get away with not wearing it in very public dining locations and study spaces all over campus. And the students are using the eating or drinking exceptions.
Yeah, so I'll speak to this, and then and Corey, Kate, if either of you want to weigh in here. So I do want to mention a couple of things. So first of all, I want to be careful here that I think our students have done a remarkable job throughout the pandemic. I think our positivity rates amongst our students prove that they've done an incredible job of trying to be as safe, I think, as they can. I know it's not perfect. I think we also have to remember that we have about 2,000 students who literally live on campus and have to have the ability to live. I'm not sure how else to say that any other way. I think we will continue to keep looking at this and continue to keep trying our best to I don't like to use the word enforce, but to encourage, but I guess, to make sure that everyone is following the rules, the best way I could say it. And I think for the most part, our students are doing that. I think we also have to remember, I'll just remind everybody again, that we are the same students who are eating and drinking on our campus can go off of our campus and immediately to be able to do so without any mask requirements. And it is there's just a lack of consistency in the county, and so it makes it more and more complicated for us to be able to model the right things, I think, for everybody to do. So know that we'll continue to make sure that that we're doing everything I feel that we can to make sure that people are being as safe as possible, and we'll keep working on doing that as we move forward. So Corey, Kate, unless there's anything you want to add there, but I do want to just, I think we don't have students on the call, but I do want to give them credit for the work that they have done throughout the pandemic. We have yet throughout this entire process to see a major spike. I think we're one of the only campuses that can make that claim, and that is because I think of how careful our students have been.
Okay, great. So this one is a similar type question. Due to the difficulty in students always wearing masks in public places like the Coffin Library, is there consideration for having the campus police to building walkthroughs to enforce the mask mandate? It's very uncomfortable for staff to do it and feels there is no ownership of that responsibility.
Yeah, so I will, again, I'll defer here to Corey or Cheryl if they want to add in here, but unfortunately or I'm not sure, unfortunately, even the right word. It's not a law to wear a mask, so it's not something I feel that our police should be enforcing. I also think it sends the wrong message to our students as we're trying to build trust between our law enforcement on campus and our students and our faculty and staff. It's not, I think, the appropriate way for us to use our police. Our police should be about, well, I don't think they should be about making sure that walking through to do sweeps to make sure students are wearing their mask. I appreciate the sentiment of that. I want to make sure that I'm saying that I understand that everyone has a different level of comfortability here, and that everyone would like to see different. There's a lot of people on the campus I know who want us to not require masks at all, and I know there's no one thing that we can do that's going to keep everybody happy here, but I don't think we will go to the point of asking police to do it. I think I want to make sure I also say that there is a process, again, that we keep saying about for faculty and staff. If you see a student that you feel is not following the mask rules, there is a process to be able to report that, and we encourage you to do so if it's something that you feel is out of line or is causing someone to be unsafe. I think that's important, and our Dean of Students office will handle that. And even if it's a question of you just need someone to go look at an area, I'd much prefer that someone from our Dean of Students office went and did that, who has the right training to be able to address the situation.
Okay. Many of the new university staff position descriptions, and I believe this is referring to title and total comp, only require a high school diploma. Can someone explain the thought process behind this, considering as many of these positions are currently filled by people with associates or bachelor's degrees? It may seem like a small thing to administrators, but it feels a bit insulting to us.
So I'll start here, and then Cheryl, perhaps maybe you could fill in. First of all, I want to make sure that everyone understands that at UW Green Bay, we did not make the title and total comp classifications. That was done by HR at UW System. I mean, I agree with you. We certainly don't want anyone to feel insulted by the job description that is in your job. I will say that regardless of what the job description says, we are always going to hire the best people we can in every position that we can. And so that it doesn't mean that just because that's the minimum job description that we're going to hire there. We're always going to seek the best possible employees in every possible position we have on the campus. But Cheryl, I want to make sure I'm getting that right. Anything that Cheryl's nodding her head, so I think we're okay. But it's a great question, and we'll keep making sure that we just understand that the title and total comp process was not a UW Green Bay process. That was a UW System process.
Okay. Is the growth in students of color, first generation, and Brown County residents attributed to the growth in high school students taking credits?
Yeah, so I would say it's definitely overlapping, right? Because we are seeing that growth in terms of where our students are, but that I do not have the specific details in terms of the breakdown for what the demographics of our high school students would be. But I would say it is certainly co-occurring.
Okay, this is a situational question. I have 2 students in the same in-person class who have tested positive with COVID. What steps are being taken to alert the other students in that class of the potential exposure? It seems only fair that the entire class be told, as it is likely that others have been exposed, especially the students sitting near them. What are we doing in these situations? Can I tell the class?
This is Corey. Can you hear me? Yeah, so that's a great question. So when we are aware of students through the Office of COVID Response who tested positive, we've communicated with those students to self-isolate. So we should not have any students who are in an in-person class who have tested positive for COVID. So I would ask under those circumstances that the instructor, faculty member, professor reach out to the Office of COVID Response in terms of that, because we have encouraged those students to self-isolate.
I can say a little bit more than you, Ben, so that we have contact tracing, right? So anyone who would be considered at risk would be contacted with that. So because we are all wearing masks in the classroom, right, there's not a significant risk, but if there was any possible risk, right, the contact tracing process is how to handle that. So the instructor should not announce to the whole class because of that. They would be directly contacted.
Great. What about faculty and compensation? What is the cost to morale and the what we do as faculty continue to leave in drove, especially female faculty? And I'm reading this exactly how it's worded. I apologize.
So this is thanks for the question. First of all, I don't think that we have faculty leaving in droves. I think that might be the units that I mentioned earlier is where we seem to be having the biggest risk of keeping faculty, and I don't have in front of me our breakdown of gender amongst our faculty, but and actually we just had a conversation about this with the compensation committee yesterday. At least as of about a year ago, the last time we looked at this, we're actually in very good shape as far as equity amongst compensation between male and female faculty members. Actually, one of the best I've seen. We're doing quite well there. At least as of about a year ago again, and I know Melissa's working on pulling those numbers to update us for the recent year. But the issue is real. I think what you're saying, I think, is important for us to continue to address. But I'm unaware of faculty leaving in droves. We are having trouble recruiting faculty, and particularly in those areas that I mentioned, and we're at risk of losing them in those areas as well because of the outside market. There's just the outside market is much higher than we're able to pay, and so we have to try to compete outside of that of the typical university market, right, within system, and push closer to the private market in those areas.
Okay. So how can those of us on the additional location campuses get our pie? Or if we are to drive to the Phoenix room, will we receive mileage, since we are one university after all?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. We will absolutely make sure that the pies get to the locations. I apologize for that. I will raise my hand on that one. We're doing this very quickly, and we're hoping to do something different. It didn't work out, but we will make sure that we absolutely deliver pies to each of the locations. So just stay tuned for that. And I apologize for the oversight on my part. That is, you will not have to drive to the Green Bay campus. That we will make sure those are delivered. Apologies.
All right. Will the barbershop and any other new services efforts be expanded amongst all campuses?
Corey, do you want to start there, or do you want me to?
I'm sorry, Ben cut out on me. Can you say the question again, Ben?
Absolutely. Will the barbershop and any other new services efforts be expanded amongst all campuses?
So that is a great question, and we are looking, as I've spoken to the location campuses and students, while we appreciate the opportunity to have services across all of our locations, we don't want to get into a mindset of just mimicking services, right? For us, it's really those services that are unique to those location campuses and to those students. And so if we find that the location campuses, based on the students and the student governance there, that they are requesting a barbershop or other type of services, we will take all of that under consideration.
Yeah, I would just add, it's a great answer, Corey. Thank you. That we just have to remember that although that we do have close to 2,000 residential students on the Green Bay campus, so there's just some different services that might be appropriate as a result of that. It doesn't mean that, as Corey's saying, that we're going to try to not provide great services across all the locations. It just there has to be some difference based on just the demand and the need for those services. Go ahead, Ben.
Hey. Can the Chancellor talk about remote work during the winter break?
Sure. So, I always have to answer this question carefully, but I would encourage it as much as possible. And I sent the email to the campus, I guess a couple of weeks ago, talking about the maximum flexibility that we can provide that we're allowed to under system policy. And so make sure to read that email very carefully. And then I would encourage all of our supervisors to be as flexible as possible and do as much as possible to allow people to recharge, both next week in between the Friday, this coming Friday, week from today, and then as we get into the break after graduation, and the break in between the holidays and into the new year, and then also once we move into the week or two, first 4 weeks of January, while the campus will be relatively quiet during the J term, where all of our classes are online. So we want to do as much as possible to please allow as much remote work as possible. Again, I always have to give the caveat here, right, that this is different for every job, right? And the work still has to get done, right? We can't not do it, but I ask you and supervisors to be as creative as possible in allowing for as much remote work as possible during that time. I think it's important to allow people to recharge, important to allow you hopefully to be able to, to get a minute to regroup, and hopefully to even be more productive while you're at home during that time is also a possibility. I know that for those who sometimes can't do any remote work during the normal year, perhaps it's possible while there are no students. So again, to think creatively about this, but again, it has to be a person-by-person discussion with their supervisor to make sure that the campus is able to, the campuses are able to still be able to function right as we go forward. So appreciate everyone's flexibility on that. And again, if as a supervisor, if you have questions about this, please reach out to HR, who's been really great about helping to, I think, find solutions here for anyone who is, if there's questions about how you might be able to achieve this.
Okay, great. This person noticed that there's an opportunity to get COVID boosters on campus in January. However, they feel like that is too late of a date. Many of us got our vaccines in March and April, and we're seeing 30% breakthrough cases now. Any chance those booster clinics will get moved up? And this person said that their supervisor does not allow remote working, so they're being exposed daily, and that's why this person is concerned.
Okay, so I think that I want to be careful how I say this, but there are opportunities. I wish it was harder to get a booster shot, but there's opportunities to get booster shots immediately right now. At least there has been for quite a while. So if you'll go, for example, with the My Prevea app or through your own healthcare provider, you can get a Prevea shot even if it's not on the campus, even after work hours. And I would hope that any supervisor would allow someone to use a flex hour or whatever to go off campus to get their vaccination booster. I want to make sure everyone understands that also that Prevea is also not immune to the labor shortage that is going on. There are huge issues in healthcare right now, and Prevea is doing everything they can to help us as fast as they can and as much as they can. So we can't move the dates. That's just the dates that they have available when they have the staffing available to give us the booster shots that are on our campus. But I still encourage everyone to get, if you want to get a booster shot as soon as you'd like.
Great. Given that a large percentage of our growth right now is in the form of college credit in high school and related programs, are we actually realizing any revenue stream from that? What implications does that have for UW Green Bay and its financial situation, and how real is it to refer to us as a university of almost 10,000 when many of those students are in Wisconsin high schools taking perhaps one college class that they don't pay us for? I do realize that these high school students may become UW Green Bay students in the future, but I'm wondering about the present.
Yeah, so I'll answer the first part and then turn it over to Cheryl about the financial implications here. But first of all, they do pay. They don't pay the same tuition as everybody else, so there is revenue that comes from every single student that takes a class at UW Green Bay, whether they're a college credit high school student or not. Secondly, I think it's really, really important, and I want to say this as clearly as I can. The only way forward, I believe, for a university like us is to start thinking differently about what it means to teach students. We have to be integrated into the region, into the community at every stage of someone's life. And the service that we are providing in college credit and high school is really, really important. It does, not only does it lead to students coming to UW Green Bay, it leads to higher educational attainment across the state and beyond because of the work that we're doing there. It also engages high school teachers with us in important ways. The work we're doing in Rising Phoenix engages students that have come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. This is vital work to be able to help the region move forward together. So I want to make sure that we are not apologizing for the work we're doing in college credit and high school. I think the mistake is, to be quite honest with you, that the rest of the state is not leaning in like we are. So I would like to see a day where that number continues to grow in the high school. It means we're more and more relevant to what's happening in education across the state. I would also like to see us continue to get more and more adult students while we're still serving 18-year-old students. This is what gets us completely ingrained into the region and make sure that our future is viable as an institution. And I don't say that lightly, right? So there are simply not going to be enough 18-year-old students for all 13 UW institutions to be able to thrive going forward. There is just not. And so either we can scrap for every single 18-year-old that was coming out of high school, which we're doing and we're going to continue to do, because I know that's how we're mostly set up as an institution to teach, or we can start thinking very quickly about how to make sure that we are able to diversify what we're doing and really lean into our identity as a place that thinks about education differently, that is innovative, right? And as we keep talking about as an institution, that this is who we are, right? That we are about access, and we're about access from K all the way through retirement. right? And that we keep leaning into realizing that that identity. So I appreciate the question, the comment. It's a really important one, and one that we need to continue to wrestle with how we speak about. But Cheryl, if you want to give more of the details about the revenue that comes in and what that means, that'd be great.
Yeah, Mike, I don't have a whole lot of new information to share other than what you summarized, which I think was accurate. Is you're right. Those students are paying, you know, a much less rate for those credits for high school. So the revenue is not, you know, is not equating to that growth. All the college credit high schools run through the CECE division. And essentially, I think we bring in a few $100,000 a year net revenue from those courses. So, you know, we have seen some modest growth in our traditional students and graduate. You know, we've seen some growth in summer and winter. So, you know, our revenue is increasing. It's just not at that rate that you see with the headcount. And we'll provide some, you know, a little bit more data on our financial projection for this fiscal year in December as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. I just say one more quick thing on this. I think it's also really important always to understand that although the revenue is not increasing at the rate we would like it to increase, it is certainly better than the alternative, which is to be going in the other direction in the revenue. And I always want to be careful how I say this, but I always want to make sure everybody understands, right? That holding steady or increasing like we are doing at the current time is incredibly rare. And we need to understand that the alternative is painful. There is no safety net below us if we decrease in enrollment, right? If we decrease in enrollment, it simply means we do not have a revenue enough to retain everybody that is working at the university. I don't know how to say that any other way. There is no other place we can cut. We have cut so much over the years that our operational budgets they're so thin that there is, if in the event that we have to take a large cut due to enrollment decline, and I think this is true across a lot of the system, there's only one place you can take that cut. And we don't want to do that, right? We want to make sure that for all the reasons, one, somewhat selfish, that we want to employ everybody and keep everybody going strong and be a great place to work. Secondly, we want to make sure that we're serving the needs of the state and the region really, really well. And so this is really, really important. And so I think that I would just summarize by saying that as you grow, this is a long process that occurs, right? You have to. It's sort of like as a if you're in the gig economy, right? You don't want to have just one gig, right, that pays all of your income. You want to have several gigs, right, so that if one is a little down, the other can be up. It protects you both as someone who's working in the gig economy and also someone as an institution, right, that you want to have enough diversity of revenue streams that you can absorb when things go a little bit up or down in any one of those areas. And so that's what we're really working to try to do from a financial point also, is to diversify our revenue streams so that we are protected against these big ups and downs that you're seeing across a lot of the rest of the country right now. So sorry for the long explanation. It's a really great question and a really great comment, and sorry for the long answer to it. Go ahead, Ben.
Wonderful. You mentioned working on competitive pay in the marketplace and increasing the bottom line for faculty. What about staff? We have been understaffed and underpaid for so long now. What support are we going to be given in the near future? We are losing even more staff due to lack of hours, reduced appointments, and split appointments between locations, and uncompetitive pay.
Yeah, so I just want to say, first of all, it's a great question and a great comment. That I listed all the areas that we are going to also give big increases in staff. And of the $500,000 that we're going to spend to increase compensation, more of that is going to staff than to faculty. It is where right now we have the biggest emergency. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that. I also want to make sure that everyone understands that there is just no way for us to fix this all at once. And I know that is hard to hear, and But I want to just keep saying that, right? That I don't think we're taking a big risk, but we're taking a risk by even giving this 500,000, right? This is not coming from recurring revenue streams. We're just taking money because of the good work everyone has done, and we're working to address the problems that we have as fast as we can address them. I will say too that long term, I'm going to meet now twice in the spring semester with the compensation committee. We'll continue to talk with this cabinet. We'll continue to work with governance to try to keep finding ways to address this issue. I know Cheryl will talk more about the budget in December. I think all of these components have to come into play as we try to work this across this issue that is not just affecting the university, right? It's affecting the entire country. And we're doing our best to try to make sure that we are getting in front of it as best we can. But it's a great comment. I respect it for sure, and we will continue to try to push as hard as we can to retain our great staff. It's part of what makes this university great and a big part of what does.
This question is very similar. Possibility of pay raises for counselors.
Oh, go ahead, Corey.
Are we talking about our counselors on campus, mental health counselors?
I think so.
Yeah, if we're talking about that, both the chancellor and the leadership is very supportive of putting more resources into our counseling center, our wellness center, and our mental health counselors. I've asked Amy, who leads our area as executive director, to look at our counseling pay and to look at our FTE. Our goal is to increase that, to make sure that we retain our quality counselors and mental health professionals that we already have, but we also are talking about adding more mental health professionals to the overall counseling center. So the answer is yes.
Okay, great. There are a large number of potential and current non-traditional students. They want online, which this person refers to as 14 and 7-week options. They have a great deal of work experience, and they typically have transfer credits, including military experience. Have we considered making these students feel like they belong here at UW Green Bay with a non-traditional or online center where we can utilize adult learning theory, have streamlined credit for prior learning pathways, devoted staff, and targeted marketing communication? I have heard a student is a student, but students have very different needs based on location, modality, age, and degree sought.
Go ahead, Kate. You start. Yep.
Yeah, so we are working on drafting a strategic enrollment plan. As part of that strategic enrollment plan, we are looking at specific places that we would like to grow enrollment, and non-traditional students is one of those. So we are looking at what specific strategies would best recruit and retain our non-traditional students. So I appreciate the question in that regard. In terms of the how to best do that, I think that's a really important question. I know that's something that the whole system is grappling with, right? In terms of there are many students out there who do have some college credit, but do not have a degree. And that is a challenge, right? Because then students are just taking on debt without a credential, which is what none of us want. So I think we are looking at what does that best support look like. We are looking at how can we have more 7-week accelerated offerings. We do have a lot more online offerings now post or mid-pandemic than we used to. And so I think continuing to figure out what is the best strategy is something that we are working on.
Yeah, I just would add really quick too that I'm encouraged to see how individual academic units are really leaning into this. And to Kate's point, we're going to do everything we can at the central level to make sure that we're providing the support services necessary to do this, of which you mentioned many that are great. But a lot of this is just going to come down as each academic unit thinks about their discipline and thinks about how it relates here and where we might have opportunities to provide access in different ways. And so it's going to be different for every discipline across the university. And part of that reason for that strategic enrollment plan is to give a framework, I think, for each academic unit to find its way forward in it. And so certainly more to come on that. Great work being done by Kate and Jen Jones, Corey, a bunch of other people who are working through that to help us to go forward.
Great. So this person is just wondering why none of the people who actually had to come in person during the entire pandemic, who are mostly your lowest paid employees, are not eligible for the 2% pay increase.
So Ben, I'm not sure we understand the question. I'm seeing some quizzical looks here on the amongst everybody. That maybe that person can just email us offline, and we can try to answer that as best we can. I just want to make sure that we're answering respectfully and correctly. So if they could just maybe send you just individually a note, and you could forward it on to us afterward, we'll make sure that we will get this answered the right way.
Fantastic. This person asks, as we are getting rid of the term main campus, what would be the best term to use to refer to the additional campuses?
So I think I don't like also the word additional, I will say. I think it is simply just the Sheboygan campus. It is the Manitowoc campus, it is the Green Bay campus, and it is the Marinette campus. Would be my preference, but I know this takes time to get into the culture, right? And so we continue to make progress there, and I appreciate everyone's work. And some of this is branding matters, right? And how we talk about ourselves matters to the outside world and how they view us. So if we can try to start using that terminology, I think it will help as we go forward.
Okay. This may not be the proper platform for this question, but can anyone provide updates on the resurrection of student media, the radio and television stations, online news stations, and how administration sees this as being part of the greater Green Bay culture?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question either. So I would encourage the person to be in contact with Dean Chuck Ryback and his efforts for GB Media. We are working on the space over in instructional services with a hopeful launch of being able to have that in January. And so I think if you had any more specific questions, that would be a perfect, I am sure Chuck would be happy to talk more about media anytime.
So this specific question, I believe, has been talked about a little bit, but I am happy to hear some areas are receiving compensation. Can you speak on the short and long-term plan to the other areas neglected that are severely underpaid?
Go ahead, Cheryl. Do you want to start there?
I think one thing we want to look at is our long-term compensation strategy as an institution. I think the biggest, that's one thing that the chancellor mentioned that HR is really trying to pull is updating that data, our compensation data, and then determining what we can afford and how we can go about doing that responsibly to address wage rates across the campus. As we've said, employees, faculty, and staff are our greatest assets. We need to do what we can to try to recruit and retain employees. So it's something we are very mindful of, and we are intending to work on our compensation strategy here in the spring. And we will share that, I'm sure, more broadly across the campus when we get that done. And the next biggest challenge, obviously, is finding the dollars to make sure that we can provide compensation responsibly and in a fiscally responsible manner for the institution, so we can sustain those increases. So we are doing all that we can to try to make sure that we are funded where we should be funded. Within the system, we're constantly making attempts to try to make sure that we're getting a greater piece of that pie, but I think, as you all know, that is going to be an ongoing battle, and most of our growth in spending is going to be based upon enrollment growth. So I think that's why it's important for us to continue our positive momentum to grow the campus so we can help fund those compensation increases in the future.
Great. So this is going to be a quick PSA because 3 people commented, so I'll just read them. Booster shots are available at Walgreens daily and are very easy to get. This person says that they just made an appointment through Bellin, and that Bellin had appointments today, all next week, and into December at least 5 locations in the Green Bay area, and that COVID-19 booster shots are also available at Walmart pharmacies. No appointment, just walk in, and this person said it takes about 45 minutes. The next question is, may I use my sick leave for my child's COVID-related quarantine?
I think I would contact Human Resources with those specific questions about your situation. It's probably the best route.
Okay. This person has 2 questions. UW Green Bay has lost some valuable employees recently to other job opportunities. What is UW Green Bay doing to retain its employees? Are efforts being made to keep employees who may be leaving? And this person said, you know, like matching the potential salary. The other one was the replacement for executive director of CC was offered to an outside employee versus promoting from within. What is this employee bringing to the role that couldn't have been achieved from the employee within?
So I think, let me just start just so that we're definitely not going to comment on a search as to why a choice was made. I think that's I want to be really careful that we don't even start that discussion. The other part of the question I think is important, that we're you know, the best thing that I could say is that that the problem didn't happen overnight, and we're not going to be able to solve it overnight. So it took us many years to get to the place we're at right now in compensation. There's not a one-day solution we can do to solve it. And I think that's important that I keep trying to say, and I keep trying to remind myself of it, right? That there's, you know, I mean, to be blunt, there is not a long-term compensation strategy that we have currently as a university, which is a problem. We need to create one, right? There is, and some of that is just because for the longest time where there was no dollars to even be able to consider it, right? I want to try to frame this as positively as I can, that the fact that we are even trying to do this in the current environment and funding for higher education, I hope that you can find some solace in this. I know that's easy for me to say, and more difficult if you're not one who is getting this initial pay bump. And so, you know, that we're trying as hard as we can to you know, we don't want to lose anyone, and we don't want to. You know, we want to make sure we're getting the very best employees we can at UW Green Bay and then retaining them. That is vital to our long-term success. And I will just say this very carefully. I hesitate to say it, but I will say it. We also never want to get in anyone's individual ability to improve their own situation. And the way the world is right now, if you look at any billboard anywhere and you look at what's happening in the market, particularly in staff roles, there's a huge labor shortage happening right now, and we're not immune to that. So, you know, I just want to make sure everyone understands, right, that we didn't get into this situation overnight, right? That it took many years for the compensation to get as low as it is relative across the university, right? It took many years of not getting cost of living increases or ability to provide merit increases or the kind of ways that you would typically improve salaries. And so we're trying now to recover from that as much as we can. You know, I understand the frustration.
Okay, so this is the update to the question that was asked that we need a little more clarity on, and there's been additional questions asked about that same point. Many of the people who were here during the pandemic, as everyone else was during the remote leave, are not eligible for the 2% raise based on what the chancellor said earlier in the coffee break. For example, people in facilities management. They were some of the lowest paid employees, and they have been here on campus during the entire pandemic, even when things were uncertain, working hard, yet we are not eligible for a raise. I would like to know why we are not eligible for the 2% raise. So I think they're just getting conflated the $500,000 pot and the pay plan increase.
You know, I can answer that. You should be eligible for that rate, for the raise coming in January. That hasn't been officially approved by the state of Wisconsin yet, but Just heard yesterday that that's in the works and there's no reason that it shouldn't be approved, but it may not be approved by January 1 is what we're hearing. But yeah, those specific employees should be eligible. And I would just suggest that maybe contacting HR would be a good step to answer your specific question, but I think maybe there's some confusion.
Okay. Just reading through the majority of the questions about the 2 and 2 pay increase and the message that went out. Cheryl, do you want to comment on that? Just about where it is in terms of Joker?
Yeah, I just was kind of referring to that. So Joker last year, the last time we had a pay plan, I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but they didn't approve it until the last week in December. So it was kind of a mad dash to try to get those increases on everybody's paychecks, by early January. We're hearing right now that it may be delayed a little bit, but still coming. So even if it's not in effect as of January 1, if we don't get you notice out yet in December, we're hearing that it should be coming, shortly thereafter. So of course, all of that is not under our purview or our control. So we will certainly communicate more as information becomes available. We just are waiting to hear as well on the news of that final decisions on the pay plan. But we're expecting that it will come, and that's what we're hearing.
Yeah, and Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just want to add that should the legislative group, the Joker group who approves this, should it come later in January, usually they would do it retroactively. So even if you miss a few paychecks on the pay raise, you would get it after the fact. They would usually do it so they would start in the normal time it would have started had they approved it in December. It's not guaranteed, I think, but that would be the typical way this is done. It would just be delayed in coming on your checks, but you'd get it retroactively, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, great. Is there a way we can have visibility amongst departments as to how they're actively recruiting and/or retaining students? It may be helpful to see how our efforts from admissions through graduation align or where potential gaps are.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. So that is actually one of the recommendations from the comprehensive program review from last year. So enrollment services is working to determine what are kind of the best practices, the best ways to be able to engage with admissions. And so hopeful to be able to share those recommendations when they are ready to be shared out.
Okay, wonderful. Is there any possibility that UW system could provide more funds to address faculty and staff retention and recruitment? President Thompson has been a great advocate for the UW. Maybe he could help.
It's a great comment. I think he is doing everything he can to help, and unfortunately, I do not see that coming. If I hope that I'm wrong and that we do get additional support for compensation, but I do not see that coming in the foreseeable future. I just want to be honest. It has nothing to do with President Thompson's advocacy. I would agree with the statement very much that he's been an incredible champion for what we're trying to do.
Okay. The message about salary increase is a challenge and has been noted multiple times this morning. Nothing has been said about workload. Workload is just as important, if not more important, than salary. When is workload going to be addressed?
This is a really important topic, and I think all of this works in conjunction together. And so we do continually think about workload. There's different ways workload is considered both for faculty and for staff. But I will just say that we are trying to sort this out. One great example would be the new advising system. Right, this was a huge step at trying to reduce workload, to make sure we have the proper number of advisors for the number of students that we have at the campus. So we hired many new advisors. We took that off the faculty's, the full responsibility of advising and mentoring away from the faculty to also help with workload. What we're doing with the scholarship system moving forward is another way that we can help to address workload for the campuses as a whole, for the university. There is this is something that's always on our mind, is not only how to increase compensation, but also to try to increase the quality of time that you have on your job, your enjoyment of your position. This is important and a great comment. I'm not sure if anyone wants to add there, but I think certainly it is a holistic piece here as to how you recruit and retain employees.
Okay. With title and total compensation, how can we assure that when people are hired for open positions, that the salary is not more than what current employees in that same position are receiving?
So I can maybe just try to tackle that a little bit. So we are working to, if we are bumping some wage rates up, we are working to address the employees that are currently in those roles, if those roles are similar and very comparable in scope and responsibilities of the job. So I'm thinking that's what you're getting at, but we shouldn't be seeing a whole lot of that for, for positions that are common across the university, for example, in the administrative support, financial specialists, where they're similar in scope and responsibility. We're trying to address that as we can through these compensation adjustments as well. Hopefully that is what your question is, but if not, please send a specific request and we can address that separately with you.
Okay, great. This person would like to reiterate the Chancellor's point about college credit in high school. Undergraduate tuition is less than graduate tuition, but we don't consider undergraduate students as less important to the university. For the same reason why we would consider college credit in high school students as less important. Isn't our mission to education the public, not to educate only one specific type of learner?
Okay, yeah, I think that's I hear the question at the end, and I'm not sure exactly how to answer, but I appreciate the comment. I agree with what they're saying.
Okay. I know a lot of questions have come in about compensation, and this person apologizes for the repetitiveness, but their particular role did not require a bilingual component. However, they are asked to partake in tasks, events due to their bilingual skills. Would this be an example of a position to be reviewed, considered for a pay increase?
So I'm not sure what position that is. I think it's hard to address it in this format, but I think if you can, I think let's make sure that I'm not even sure what area of the university you are, and so if you can send that up to your supervisor, and if it's in one of the area leaders that are here, well, I think it would likely be, to please make sure that your area leader knows the situation and let's assess it.
No further questions at this time.
Okay, thanks, Ben. First of all, thanks everyone for the questions today. These are really important questions, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to answer them. A very complicated time right now. I just want to reiterate that it's I wish at some point we'd be able to say that things are getting simpler, but there's still a lot of things that are circling. We're obviously still dealing with the pandemic. We're trying to deal as best we can with what's happening in the labor market across the country and at our university. And meanwhile, we're trying to focus as much as we can on the long-term vision of what the university is doing. And I want to just continue to remind you of that that is, as much as possible, try to see the bigger picture of what we're doing, what we're achieving, and how we're trying to get there. And I appreciate everyone's work on that. Enrollment growth doesn't happen by accident. It also doesn't happen from just 1 year's worth of work. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that even 3%, if you want to ignore college credit in high school, which I don't think we should, but even if you wanted to, even 3% growth in, if you want to call it traditional students, is pretty remarkable in this day and age for a regional comprehensive university, and we should celebrate that. And we should understand that is years and years of hard work that has occurred on this university to make that happen by all faculty and staff. And so we should just take a minute to celebrate that. I hope that you have a really great weekend and really take time next week and the days off to enjoy time away. That we have a strong finish to the semester, and that again, that you take as much time as possible in the winter break to be able to recharge, to be with your loved ones, and to really be to continue to keep the momentum we have as a university. So appreciate the time this morning. I look forward to hopefully seeing you all very soon. So enjoy next week, and hopefully we'll be able to connect again in the very near future. So thanks for a great session this morning, and have a great weekend.